This is Ahmed, and this is the Breakout here at the School of Advanced Studies, SAS Tumen. And this is our second season of our podcast. This time we are having Eva Burbo. So Eva is the Associate Director for Education here at the School of Advanced Studies, and we will listen actually to her kind of, story. All right, we will have a good discussion with Eva, conversation, an interesting one. But Eva, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you for inviting. I'm looking forward for our discussion, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
All right. So actually, spoiler alert is that we sit together in the same office, our desks like in front of each other, but we came from different places. We have different kind of educational experience. We are having completely different views on the world and so on and so forth, right? So you studied somewhere in Europe, and then you came to Russia to start also studies in Russia, and then you worked and you simply got married and you have life right now in Russia. So let's start from where? Where do you would like to start from?
Well, first of all, I came to Russia to work in the first place. I took my little gap year before I continued my studies. So after my bachelor's, I took, I think, about 2 years gap before I proceeded with master's. Because I felt like I'm enough with studying after bachelor's. It was an intensive program. I studied international law and it was really demanding. For 3 years, I was working also in parallel, and I thought, I want now to practice a little bit, to do work and to change a little bit my routine. Hence, I came to Russia. I started working at the university, at Tomsk State University, and then after working there for a year, I decided that I also would like to I'm ready for the master's studies, and I would like to apply for a master's degree in international relations. So that's how I ended up with the MA after my BA.
Excellent. All right, but how do you remember your BA? For example, people usually remember their BAs, the 4 years BA, they remember it differently. They remember it with some people simply remember it with joy, all right? Some people remember it with regret, and some people remember it with kind of a moment of we can say like it changed their lives, all right? A moment of reflection and so on and so forth. And how do you remember your BA? Because certainly during this BA, you developed some sort of a level of ambition that helped you come to Russia in order to have this life that you are having right now. And whether this was an influence by your study, by your educational environment, or simply it was you from to begin with, like this person didn't change, it's just that the BA helped you look, at the world differently.
Well, it did definitely help to look at the world differently, but I think it turned out in a way that I didn't expect. So to begin with, I was always a diligent student. I must say I was a little bit of a nerd, put it this way. I was studying a lot. I was, attending classes always at school, but I also was doing a lot of after-school activities. So I was participating in all kinds of different student unions, clubs. I was the president of my class, and then later I was also presenting the representative at the university at the student council of the school. So I was very active. So I knew that I would like to pursue the same kind of active lifestyle in my BA. But there was one little thing that when choosing my BA, of course, when we transit from school to the university, you have this big question, okay, you have this active life, but what do? You cannot do work, as a, president of the school or something, you need a career. And I had this vague understanding of there are certain things that I like to do. Like I like talking a lot, I like communicating with people, I like arranging things, organizing events, but you can say about any profession something like this, right? It's not something specific about one field. So it was quite difficult when I started thinking about where I will go for my BA, what I will do specifically, especially in terms of the profession, career, program. I was quite lost. And I really clearly remember that my first steps in choosing the BA and in my BA years was connected with fear, because I was terrified of choosing something wrong, of choosing not something that fits me. And my mom played a role here, because my mom is a lawyer, and I spent a lot of time with her when I was a kid, working with her, I know, in the office, carrying documents and things like that. I like that. But I didn't want the life of my mother's. And I was really sure that I want to do something, but not like my mom, just not like my mom. I didn't want her life. I wanted my life. But that meant no law in any kind of universe. But my mom was very like, maybe you look at this brochure, maybe you look at that, maybe you want to do economics. And I was like, economics does sound a little bit similar to law, there is a trick there. Yeah. So I always felt very cautious about this mom's pushing me and trying to convince one or the other way. But she wasn't, I must say, thanks to her, she wasn't like, oh, you will do this and only this. No, she was kind of directing, sometimes more pushy way, sometimes not, but not kind of, but allowing me to make my own decision. And then my own decision went into international law. And when I entered the university, when I started the bachelor's, the first 2 months, literally, I was terrified. I was the feeling of, oh my God, is this my choice or my mother's choice? So I spent first half a year at the university thinking whose choice it is.
Existential crisis.
Yes.
Kind of thing, right? Yeah, that I think that our students here at SAS are having this experience 2 times. The first time is trying to convince their parents to simply come to the school or simply choose the university, right? And they choose the so-called, at least at this moment, preferred major, the preferred kind of a field that they would like to join and enroll at. But then after 2 years, because here at SAS, as you know, right, so there's that they are having the same thing again, it's repeated again. And I think that I don't know whether you had the same experience, whether you had also like the 2 years and then you could change, or simply you decided to study international law from the get-go point. Because here, after 2 years, even if you, for example, I don't know, enrolled at the university hoping to study cultural studies, after 2 years you can, for example, go to IT, you can go to economics afterwards. It's up to you. And then of course it is with this kind of a choice comes an anxiety. Did you have the same experience for the same 2 years, or was it different that you studied from the beginning?
So for me it was different. I didn't have those 2 years to make my choice, because I immediately entered the law program, and it was one program. So you cannot. We did study many different fields of law, but it wasn't like a choice. So it was already a packed program. But I think the most important here, when we think about this choice, and in my case about this fear, what I understood in the end is that it's okay to make a mistake. And I think I stopped fearing of whether it's my mother's or my choice when I realized that it's okay, even if it's hers, I can change. And actually, even I figured out that I like international law. I love the field, so I was like, okay, so it's my choice, good. But then also, because what happened to me is when I entered the university, the program that I studied was a 4 years program in the beginning, the one I chose. And I realized that it's a little bit, at a certain point I even realized it's a little bit too easy. So I met this, I call it a little gang of students that we were doing a lot of things together, projects and stuff. And we figured out that we would like to switch a program. And that meant starting the education from the first year again. So we would need to skip this 1 year that we already studied and go for another program. The plus was that this another program that we chose was 3 years. So basically I'm not losing anything. So even though I'm repeating year 1, but I'm not losing anything. So I was like, first I was again terrified. Oh my God, I need to repeat a year again. But then I was like, okay, wait. You would study 4 years, now you study 3 years. Well, in terms of time, it doesn't change anything. And now when I look at it, and especially that I work in the university here in Russia, and when I started also working back then in Tomsk, I saw students, I was talking to them, and literally I felt like they are afraid of making this mistake, and for them, if I chose, you know, something, it's done, you know, I cannot change. And it was really, they were shocked when I was telling, you know, you can switch, you know, after 1 year, 2, or, you know, while you realize that it doesn't fit you, switch. You don't need to wait until, you know, you graduate with, I know, cultural studies, and you realize I want to do, I know, economics. Because for what? You know, university is the time of your life when you do things that you like, that you enjoy, and that help you grow. And you cannot do that if you're learning subjects that and being with people that are not your cup of tea. And in university, apart learning, you have the community. It's very important, the network you are building. So being in a program, I don't know, with cultural studies, this is your network that you afterwards use. So when I realized this, all my fears were gone. I decided that, okay, I'm choosing once again, I'm switching the program once again. I'm going for year 1 once again, and I didn't regret anything. That was really very educational, and that was really something that afterwards shaped the way I looked at things differently already in the next stages.
Yeah, well, I actually share the same opinion. Is that I spent the 8 years getting my BA, and this is because I quit my first BA. I think on I mean. Simply, the last year of my BA, it was in English literature and linguistics. I quit it, and because I realized that I don't want to be an English teacher. I don't want to be a journalist, if I could even. And simply, I didn't see the world as I was portraying it when I was choosing the major when I was 18 years old. So I decided that I'm gonna simply quit that, and I did this, and I quit it, and I came to Russia to simply have my year preparatory in the preparatory department, and I finished it, and then I got my BA in cultural studies. Also, before even joining SAS, I I even thought that I will study film studies, but then later I changed my major in my second year to culture studies, which is, I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty fine with my choice and pretty satisfied with my choice. And now I'm attending the MA, right? When in a completely different field, right? But in different to yours is that you had, so you, if we're gonna summarize it, that you were active, you were very kind of reflective on your choice. You were trying to understand why you chose that for, I don't know, for 1 year at least. Let's say that at the beginning you were thinking a lot about that, whether you chose the international law because it's your actually interest or because your mom, and yeah, and so on and so forth. But you were very active about that. Whether it then for some reason, all right, you are saying is that once exactly you finished the 4 years program, you just came to Russia. How did it happen? I mean, but did you also take the active role in choosing to come, simply choosing coming to Russia, or how it was?
Well, to begin with, it was always my dream, to be honest. I always wanted to go to Russia and, well, at least to visit. That was the first kind of stop. And I was, even at the university, I was a lot having friends. From Russia, from different cities, towns, regions, and all very often hanging out with them and talking about Russia, and I was fascinated with this opportunity of going. So all started from actually it also connects with the fact how I ended up to do what I'm doing now, because well I'm the associate director for education. Doesn't sound like law, right? Career.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not at all. So, and actually I think not for a day I practiced law as a legal professional. So actually studied one thing but doing the other, but it's not like it wasn't useful. But coming to how I went to Russia. So when I was at my BA level, exactly, I was also very active student. I was doing many things related to legal studies, and not only. And one of the things was I was starting to being a student assistant to a group of scientists who were collaborating with Russia. I was helping them because I speak Russian, so I was helping them with communication, with translations, with arranging their trips to Russia and so on. And at a certain point, hooray, I got my first trip to Russia. They invited me to go to Russia with them on a conference as an assistant. That was a marvelous trip. I loved it so much, and it happened to be that I went to Tomsk. It was April. It was freaking cold. It was snowing when we got out of the airport at 6 o'clock in the morning. You know, I couldn't see anything, just snow. There were piles of them. But I remember that trip very well because the people were so nice. The food was amazing. This winter weather, I love winter, so for me it wasn't a problem. This
Really?
was...
You really like winter?
I love winter. Yeah.
How come?
I was born in winter, so I always,
see.
you know, I connect this with the fact that...
Can I open the window?
No, it's cold. Yeah, so I really love winter, and when I went to Tomsk, it was like, oh my god, it's my fairy tale, you know. I loved everything about the place, and actually one of my best friends, we are still communicating, was from Tomsk, and I was really, from that time, everything changed. And when we came, it was already my second year at university, when we came from that short trip from Tomsk back to university, I was constantly dreaming that, okay, I need to go back. I must go back. I really want to go back to Russia. And so what I was starting to do, I was, okay, so if I want to go to Russia, what can I do? I either can study or work. With working, it was a little bit more complicated because, well, I would need a visa and things like that. That the work has to arrange. So I thought, okay, let's do education. So anyhow, I needed master's degree, so I thought I will go for MA, and that's how I will end up in Russia. So what happened, I actually, after I graduated my BA in international law, I applied to MGIMO, for MA in global affairs. I think back then it was called the program. I applied, I got accepted, and exactly I think at the same moment I get an offer from Tomsk State University to come to work. And then I was like, okay, so I have a choice even, you know. And I was like, I can go to do an MA, or I can go to Tomsk to work. And I was like, okay, in a way, you can do MA always, right? You can always apply and get in. If I got in MGIMO once, I was like, I can do that second time, right? So I was like, okay, we go with the job. Everybody was surprised. When I said, everybody, I'm going for a job and I'm going to Tomsk, everybody was looking at me and saying, you must be out of your freaking mind to do this. Because, well, it's cold. It's somewhere halfway in Asia, Siberia. What are you going to do there? And so on and so forth. All those kind of, you know, stereotypical questions. And I never cared. I was like, you know, it's not like that. You know, I never believed in those fairy tales in the books, you know, when they say that, you know, bears on the streets and stuff like that. Like, no, I've been there, I saw it, I love it. So that's how I packed my stuff. I got my diploma after BA, and I went directly to the Tomsk State University and ended up working in a university. And actually, that's how it all started. So while starting as a student assistant during my studies in the BA, I continued into this educational sphere. And actually, that's how I ended up being with universities, talking about education, working with this specific topic and liking it very much. And all my skills I gained in law were all very helpful, and they still are, because the way I think, the way I do things, you know, it all taught me this stuff.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter that I don't use the, so to say, hard professional skills, you know, I don't use articles, I don't know, codes, constitutions and stuff. This is something I can open, retrain and get again. But most importantly, I know how to write, how to communicate, how to, to think critically, analytical. This is all useful in my everyday job life. And I don't regret this kind of trajectory at all.
I see. But you're saying is that it has been always a dream of mine to come to Russia, right? You are saying that. Is that why exactly? What attracted you? Is it because of your family? Is it because the country itself? Is it because of the people? Because if you had a dream to come to Russia, all right, how were you influenced to have such a dream?
Oh, that's a difficult one. I think, well, yeah, indeed, this is because of my family in a way, because my dad, well, he invested a lot in raising me in the Russian culture. I watched like Russian movies, read Russian books, and so on. And I must say also that for me, the people were very important. So when I met Russian people, I always had the feeling that, these are different people. I don't know if you compare to any other, like for example in Europe or somewhere else. I felt like they're more open-hearted, like they're welcoming, nice, and I felt much more comfortable with being with them rather than with for example with my other international colleagues. And I know that. Call it maybe an inner feeling, or I don't know, something that's always kind of pushed me to go there. And I'm really glad that in a way it all came up in such a way. It's good that I knew Russian language, so that was good that my dad taught
Yeah.
me. So it all started with the Russian language. Let's
Yes.
put it this way. So
Yeah.
because this allowed me to have this assistant's job and continue afterwards into what I'm doing, and yeah, exploring. I think it's also what's important. I'm glad now that I didn't go to Moscow, because I think Moscow is still central part of Russia. It's a little bit different too. I travel quite a lot around Russia now. Well, I'm in Tumen. I also have been to Irkutsk, to Ulan-Ude, near Baikal, and so in Altai, for example. I very much like to travel around Russia because it has a very beautiful nature. It has very different landscapes and even different people from region to region. They do unite on certain traits, but they're different. And I love exploring this Russia beyond, Ural Mountains and everything, what goes there. Because even though everyone speaks that, oh, it's so far away, I still have a dream. I need to go to Vladivostok. I never been there. I really want to go there.
We actually should go there. That's absolutely true. But yeah, okay, so it's because of the people, it's because of your family, it's because simply you didn't have an idea about how your life can be here. You didn't plan, for example, anything,
No.
right? So you just went with the flow, but you were very active participant in this flow, in this kind of fate thing, if we may say that, right? And do you think that this kind of a skill to be on the top, or at least conscious of the choices that life are giving to you, this skill was acquired by your family, and if yes, who then actually helped you have this such a skill? Is that, well, you need, life throws simply, I don't know, on new opportunities and the choices and so on and so forth, right? And you need to be conscious about that. You need to be understandable and very aware of the choice that you are making, right? Who taught you that? Is it like the education? Is it the school? Is it your family?
Well, I think it's both family and education. If we go back in time to the school years, I wasn't a nerd always. I was struggling very much in my first years at school, in my primary and secondary school, because of the language. Because at home we speak several languages. We speak Polish, Russian, and Lithuanian. And when I went to school, because I went to the Lithuanian school, I had to speak only Lithuanian, and I never learned it properly because at home, again, Russian was the main language. And it was very difficult for me because, of course, language in general is such a thing. If you don't work on it, especially when you're a kid, if you don't have this practice, it's very hard. And my mom was sitting there with me, helping me to learn. And I had very bad grades in the beginning. I was really struggling. And because of the language, I was struggling in all subjects. And my mom taught me that, don't be afraid to make mistakes. If it doesn't work this time, it will work next time. And that's how, I think it took me about 4 or 5 years to deal with this language problem before I managed to get into level that I'm good with the language in such a way that I can continue with my already nerdy style of working. So I was very, in this sense, I was very hardworking all the time. And I remember when I saw, in high school, kids having this diploma for their excellent performance at school. I was watching at them and saying to my mom, I was dreaming. I was like, I really want that diploma, I don't want to be there somewhere. I want to be, to go on the stage. The director gives me the... So I have this kind of, probably maybe, what is it? Selfish or egoistic kind of thing? I don't know.
I think it's just a competitive.
Oh, maybe that, yeah. So I really wanted it, and I was like, I want to be there. So what I need to do, and I was really investing very hard to be there. And I think that taught me the most important lesson: don't be afraid to make mistakes. And when you're not afraid to make mistakes, you repeat sometimes things, yes, but while repeating you learn, and then you find your way out. Now often, because I talk to parents, to prospective students, they often ask me, who am I going to become after I graduate the university? Hell knows. Seriously, I hate that question. Then they ask, who am I not going to become? I was like, I don't know. Don't ask me. Because, my story shows that, I became a completely different person than I would expect it to be graduating law, But I think the most important that I always followed kind of my feeling of, okay, what is right to do? I was discussing maybe I always had this person. My mom was always my friend in this. I was consulting with her, because sometimes, of course, it's scary to make a decision on your own, very much. But I think this persistency in achieving, in competing, I think this my kind of inner fighting for myself, this was one element. And the second was the fact that my mom supported me in all kinds of beginnings that allowed me to go through this, through my journey the way I did. And hence I hate answering question of who you're going to become, because I think this doesn't matter. Because what matters is what you do in this every day, every single step, what you do. Because this teaches you what are you going to do. The jobs are changing so fast now that, you cannot expect that after you 4 years study a bachelor, you will end up in this specific position, This is no way, because maybe this position is no longer going to exist.
Yeah, the problem is that about this question, who you are gonna be, is that I always, I think I portrayed, or at least perceive this question as somebody is throwing on me a semiconductor and a keyboard and a motherboard and the stuff, whatever that and then says to me, you don't know how to simply make and create a computer. Do it right now. And I feel like I don't know anything. I mean, I'm an idiot. I'm 18 years old, an idiot, and I don't know anything. I didn't travel. I didn't experience enough in life. And simply life can be tricky. And I really don't like this question, is because the people, I understand where it's coming from, that they care about you, is that they want you to have some sort of a clear idea about what do you would like to become. But most of the time, what is really funny about this whole thing is that after you declare your choice of education, you simply say, I will study that and then I will leave. Nobody cares about you afterwards. And actually, in the middle of the entire process, if you changed your educational path, nobody cares about you. I mean, it's just this pressure moment, and I think it's just a tradition. I think it will go away. But it's important here is that in your case, for example, you had these skills of picturing the world differently, or in different pictures, because of the languages thing, right? Is that you were with family, you were a different person. There's a different world. In the school, it's another one. With other members of the family, it's a different one. Is that maybe because of the language helped you to do that, and maybe then this skill, I don't know, but correct me if I'm mistaken, is that this skill simply helped you later, when the life threw on you some sort of choices and so on and so forth, you were able to picture, you were able to simply see what is gonna happen if you go one way or another. Is it like, were your parents also conscious about teaching you different languages when you were young, because they knew that you should be it will help you develop a competency that it will simply have an effect later? Or is it because just paprikol.
Well, no, I think we always, in our family, we always believe that, a language is an instrument. I also always say to everybody around me, if they ask, like, language is something you do not carry as a bag or something, It's something you learn, and if you practice, it's with you all the time. And you then find your way with different communities, with different situations, and so on. So, we spoke, well, at home. They always encouraged me to learn different languages. Of course, they encouraged me to learn English because, well, the most spoken language in the world. So, you need to understand and use it. I was also learning German at school, because it was my third language that I was learning at school. And at a certain point I even could speak a little bit of German. I had some German friends, and we were talking, but now, since I'm not using it anymore, I kind of lost it, which is a regret thing that I would say I regret, because I think, again, language is a good thing. When more languages it's kind of cooler. I don't know, I do feel cooler, it's like you have a list of languages I know I can speak.
I think I'm fine with my Arabic.
Well, this is something I would definitely now think of learning. When I've heard Chinese, I was like, no, I cannot learn Chinese, but Arabic, maybe I could do an attempt of.
I think Arabic is fun to learn, because this the history of the region is really, really interesting. I mean, it's really interesting, especially if you know the language, and then you will go to study the history of this region and the culture of the region in the native language. I think this applies. I think this is a stupid opinion, but because it applies even on everywhere. But that.
I think it's not stupid at all, in the sense that, I think when you travel, I don't know if you noticed, but when you come to a country, to any country, be it, and you speak their national language, this makes people to talk to you differently. They open up. They are ready to show you things. They are different, and this way you learn the world better when you speak not a medium language. Let's say, I don't know, you speak English because everybody speaks it, right? But when you speak a language of the country, you show a respect to that country. You show a certain level of admiration, and they accept you better. I have this feeling that, when I know the language, and I think that was also very important in my journey to Russia, because despite the fact that I speak Russian from the very little, I do remember that I was a little bit struggling maybe my first months in Russia, because speaking the language does not yet allow you to understand people perfectly, and I had to have some time to understand how people work, how they communicate, how they operate, because the cultural things are different, and you cannot really learn them from I don't know, books or things. You need to experience them. So, but I do 100% agree that language helped me to transit this period of living in Russia the first months much faster, because I understood the language and I could understand, I don't know, jokes, some sayings and so on. This I even remember when my friends were so surprised, like, oh, you understand this saying, or no, you remember this phrase from a movie or something, because we have so many of those classical Russian movies that people know by heart, that you watch on New Year's, for example, or something.
Yeah, I have this Ochibnik, that this textbook that is, I think it's like 500 pages of sayings and proverbs that are similar in Arabic and in Russian. And every time I open this textbook, I am always amazed by how similar they are to each other. And it's stuff that I really thought that it's exclusive to Arabic speakers, but it turned out that in Russian they exist, and it helped me sometimes actually communicate with people in a better way. But I totally agree with you, is that the assimilation process is much more easier when you know the language of the country, the integration process. And I saw too many foreign students, for example, that so there is this thing that international student syndrome, right? We are having the first period, which is like the honeymoon period, and they are fascinated by the country, they are fascinated by the environment, they are fascinated by the trip, right? But then comes after that the cultural shock, and I think most of the time it happens because of the lack of not the lack. I mean, the simply you do not speak the language. Maybe you don't understand the people, and so on and so forth. And that's why you are having this cultural shock that it happens to you. And it seems to me that you, when you came to Russia on your short trip, you had this honeymoon period, and you didn't have the cultural shock, but you had it maybe later when
Yeah,
you came later, right?
it was delayed for me, definitely.
Yes, it was. So it was delayed, but for some reason you simply moved on. So what helped you actually to stand up and move on? Is it because you were having? So I know, for example, you have this a hobby of dancing, right? I don't know if I call it hobby, but whatever, right? Because you're participating in professional competitions, so it's not certainly like a hobby. You can actually make a living out of that, right? So you is it because of the dancing thing? Is it because of the language thing? Is it because of the work? Is it because of Tomsk? Is it because of your husband? I don't know. Is it because how it happened is that you moved on and they integrated and so on and so forth? Because this integration actually maybe helped you calm down your anxiety and fear and so on and so forth.
Probably I will say one thing: I just simply never give up.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the most important thing, because yes, it was difficult, and yeah, the hobby helped, but that's, again, you see, the environment. For example, when I was a student back in my BA, I also, it's not like I developed my hobby of liking dancing just in Russia. I always liked dancing. I was doing this when I was high school student. Then in university as well, I remember we had those salsa clubs I like to go to. But it was, again, it was something where I did not feel kind of home. I don't know. It wasn't the thing that I liked. But when I came here, when I came to Russia, when I came to Tomsk, and when they showed me some dance schools, and I started to be with them, and I really entered this community of dancers who also were very welcoming. They were so shocked, like, oh, you came from so far away, and you like to be in Tomsk. Like, who the hell goes to
Yeah,
Tomsk because it's cold and it's
yeah,
winter,
I
and stuff like
understand.
that. But I was like, no, I like it so much. They were so nice to me. They became my family, and they allowed me not to give up. And I really loved it so much. And I knew that I like to be in that place. I was thinking that, okay, I might move from Tomsk somewhere to maybe some other city. I never considered that Tomsk would be the last destination where I go. Actually, I think at a certain point of my life I realized, that there is no such thing, I think, as a one place to live. You have your home, but you very often can travel, move, and our careers, our jobs are actually now designed in such a way that you probably don't stay in one place for 10, 15 years. That's another important thing if we go back to the topic that we started off, choosing of the careers and the students, because I think it's a little bit of a myth of thinking that, I'm going to work in one place.
Mm-hmm.
No, you might work in one place for a year or for 3 months and then change to another and things like that. And the same goes about cities, towns, countries. So for me, I think one thing I was sure, I want to stay in Russia, but I was not exclusive to Tomsk. I really liked it. Yes, well, it happened afterwards that I met my husband there, and I stayed, but as you can see, now I'm in Tumen, so it didn't stop me from traveling further.
But here is the thing. I disagree with you in this regard in the about the fact that we should move, or we should perceive it as a fact that we should move from a place to another 3 months or 4 months or 5 months. And I will give you an example on your story. Is that, for example, I think a lot of movement is bad because it brings a lot of anxiety and some sort of I think some difficult question you ask about yourself specifically right now in this day and age is that when you move from a workplace to another every 1 year or 2 years or whatever the span is, it depends on people, but I think it brings an anxiety of the question who you are and how can you fit right in such a space. It means that, like, you will always become like the outsiders. And for you, so to give you an example, is that at least you had one assurance, is that you were saying, well, I knew that I would stay in Russia. And I think that this is the assurance, and this was like kind of the cornerstone, right? That this is your campus, right? Is that you should not go away from that, all right? But changing the environment like on different spans and frequently, I think it brings to people this anxiety of not knowing who you are, and you always become an outsider or as simply strange to the environment and so on and so forth. But so I do not simply encourage people from moving. I myself moved from my home country coming here to Russia, but I think is that people should move after knowing that what is their cornerstone, to know their corner first, because afterwards they can simply jump to the different level, whether up or downstairs or whatever. It's okay. So that's why I disagree about this changing thing. It brings really a lot of anxiety.
You know, I have a feeling you kind of are looking into me and taking out those emotions from
Why?
from when I was traveling, and because you are right. Of course, it's not easy. Before I actually came to Russia, and when I was moving from the university from hometown to university, and then thinking of moving here to Russia, of course you feel uncertain of the things that you will have. And the most important thing, you don't have anybody around you. You can have friends, you can have, I don't know, family, but you alone are much more easily movable than all your belongings sometimes, and all your friends and family. So I do have friends in many different places in the world, but when a difficult moment comes in our life, sometimes you feel like I would like to go somewhere. I know I would like to visit for a dinner a friend, but do I have that friend here, or do I have my family? I can call, but it's not the same. So of course you're right, it's not easy, and it's very difficult, and emotionally this is very demanding, and hence yes, you're right, this moving might be not a plus. But what is important here is that how do I say this, you need to be in a way open to those different opportunities, because I think the problem is that we are constraining ourselves this kind of a box when we start thinking of all those nuances, like, I know, oh, I will move, I will not have my friends, I will not have my family around, or I will have to buy a new apartment, things like that. These are the things that we need to consider, but think wisely of, what of this is the most important. Because sometimes people, by looking at those small details, put it this way, they neglect the most important thing. Am I happy in the work, or I know place where I am and what I'm doing? Because very often we stay just because it's comfortable, because we're used to it like it is, and we are afraid to confess to ourselves that something is not working. And this is a critical moment.
Actually, this is a very good point to end our discussion right now, is that because I feel like what we discussed today is that the idea, not the skill, I mean the ability to weigh the odds and not be afraid of things. It's just because if you will, I don't know how to say it. It's just if you really thought about everything, and you weighted your opportunities, and based on a realistic measurement of what you can do and what you cannot do, right, limiting yourself or simply being ambitious at this regard, is that you would always be okay. You would always be happy. You would always be, simply satisfied with your thing, right? So I really think that this is a very good thing that you said right now, is that, and the whole conversation was about, do what you can, but simply think about what you are doing, right? And also take in consideration what you can do and what you cannot do. Would you like to say anything, actually? No? Yes?
I think I've said a lot.
Okay. All right. So this was it. Subscribe, like, and share our conversation. And if you have any questions, of course, we will be happy to answer you anytime. So this was it. And this was our conversation here at the Breakout. See you.